In 1996, a group of staff were requested by Konami to produce a game that would appeal to the Western audience. That group of staff would later be known as Team Silent, consisting of key members such as producer Gozo Katao, director Keiichiro Toyama, artist Masahiro Ito, and sound director Akira Yamaoka. At first, development for the game was a struggle due to Konami not giving the developers enough creative freedom with the project. After a series of failed projects and ideas, Team Silent eventually decided that they would ignore the profit-orientated limitations that they were given and make something that they wanted to create. That being, a game that would prey on both the player's perceptions and emotions. The project was eventually revealed at E3 1998 as Silent Hill, where it received a positive response from the audience. The game was then released for the PlayStation in North America on the 23rd of February 1999, and since then has become one of the most influential survival horror games of all time. I never got to play survival horror games as a kid, simply because I was too afraid to play them. Fast forward to nowadays, and survival horror has become one of my favorite game genres. Silent Hill is a series that I've always wanted to delve into, and after recently falling in love with the Resident Evil games, I think it's about time that we finally checked out the Silent Hill games. So, why don't we start off with the first one, shall we? In this game, we play as a man named Harry Mason, who at the start of the game travels to the town of Silent Hill with his adopted daughter Cheryl for a vacation. Suddenly, a girl appears on the road, which causes Harry trying to avoid her to swerve and crash his car. We later wake up in the town, only to realize that Cheryl has gone missing. As we start to explore the town to find her, though, we quickly realize that it is quiet. Way too quiet. I guess they don't call it Silent Hill for nothing. Eventually, we catch a glimpse of Cheryl in the distance, who starts running away as we try to talk to her. Where do you think you're going, you little punk? As we continue to chase after her, though, she eventually leads us to an alleyway where strange things start to occur. Suddenly, the world becomes darker, a siren starts ringing in the background, and as we delve deeper, we eventually hit a dead end, where we find a corpse strapped to a fence. Wow. That's disgusting. After inspecting the corpse, though, we suddenly get attacked by a bunch of monsters. And with nowhere to run and no way to defend ourselves, we succumb to the monsters' attacks. We then wake up in a diner, where we meet this woman named Sybil, who is a police officer from the next town over. According to her, aside from Harry, there seems to be no sign of anyone else in the town. And not only that, but devices such as phones and radios are also dead as well. Sybil heads off to go and get some reinforcements, but not without leaving Harry with a gun.
Now listen to me. Before you pull the trigger, know who you're shooting, and don't go blasting me by mistake.
For me? Oh, I really appreciate it! Oh, shit. Now with a way to protect ourselves, we can now go forth with our main objective, and that is to find our fucking daughter. Exploration is one of the main things that we will be doing. There are many locations that we visit in the town of Silent Hill, all of which we will be fully exploring to find things such as key items and puzzles to progress in the game. Some of the puzzles are as simple as placing an item in a certain spot, while some are a lot more interesting in the sense that they require you to solve a riddle to get the answer to the problem that you are trying to solve. For example, one of the earlier puzzles in the game involves you hitting the keys on a piano in a specific order. But what you will notice is that if you start playing around with the piano, you realize that some of the keys don't produce a note at all. In the same room, you also find a poem called A Tale of Birds Without a Voice, which in short is basically listing a bunch of birds at different distances. So, with these clues given to us, how do we solve the puzzle? Since the title of the poem is called A Tale of Birds Without a Voice, it hints that we should only be hitting the silent keys. Reading from the poem again, we also notice that every bird listed are either a shade of black or white, just like the piano keys. That, and they are also noted to be at different distances from each other. So to solve this puzzle, basically what we have to do is hit only the silent keys on the piano, while also keeping in mind of the order of all of the birds that are described in the poem. There are a few puzzles like this that you will encounter throughout the game, some way harder to solve than others, and although I did struggle with some of them, I still had a lot of fun trying to figure them out. Something that I really appreciate in this game is that whenever you do something like explore a new area, find something important, or even interact with a door that cannot be opened, the game automatically notes that down on your map. Which of course is incredibly convenient since it not only helps prevent you from backtracking to places you've already been to, but it also helps you keep track of where certain things are, as well as let you know what areas you have not searched yet. You good? You need to talk? You wanna go to Macca's? Macca's run! Yeah, baby! Aside from exploring, one of the other things that you'll be doing is fighting a variety of different monsters. We are of course equipped with the gun that Sybil gave to us earlier on, but you should keep in mind that ammo in this game is pretty limited, meaning that if you rely on using your gun throughout the entirety of the game, you will most likely run out of ammo for or during important situations. I personally ended up hoarding a lot of my ammo and mostly used melee weapons throughout my playthrough.
Get your hand off my penis!
Which one of the weapons that I used the most was the hammer. Although it is slower compared to the other melee weapons in the game, the amount of damage it would put out was pretty much worth the clunkiness in my opinion. The only time that I would use guns was during the boss battles, which I usually had enough ammo saved up to get through them pretty easily. I also picked up some rifle ammo during my playthrough, but I never ended up finding the rifle, so, whoops. Talking about the bosses for a second, there are a few that you will have to fight in the game. And if I'm being honest with you, I didn't really struggle with most of them. Though that being said, it is probably because I chose to play on normal difficulty, since this was my first time ever playing the game. I will have to mention though that the normal difficulty was way easier than I expected. I didn't really find many of the enemies to be that much of a threat. Yeah, they looked scary, but the amount of damage they would deal was not as bad as they looked. I also found that I always had an abundance of healing items to use because I kept on finding them, but I barely needed to use them since I wasn't taking too much damage. Also, even though I said earlier that ammo was limited, there was just a lot of it laying around, and since I never really used my guns outside of boss battles, I never found myself running out of bullets. After finishing the game for the first time though, I did decide to play a little bit of it again, but on a harder difficulty, and I have to say, I definitely felt like I had a more challenging yet positive experience. One of the main things that I instantly noticed when I played on hard mode was that it made me feel more cautious of enemies. Enemies now deal a good amount of damage, so instead of trying to kill every enemy in my way like I did on my normal run, I started trying to evade enemies by running past them. I also started using my guns on enemies outside of boss battles at times when I felt like I really needed to prevent taking any unnecessary damage. Playing on hard mode pretty much forced me to be more resourceful. It made me have to keep in mind how much ammo and health items I had. It made me have to decide whether I should try and fight certain enemies to guarantee that I don't take damage, or whether I should try and run past them to save my ammo, but also risk taking a hit in the process. If you are planning to play the game for the first time and you have some experience with survival horror games, I definitely think that choosing the hard difficulty is the way to go. One of the most common occurrences that you will find in Silent Hill is that whenever you enter a new area, things generally look pretty normal. Well, aside from all the monsters attacking you, that's not normal. But as you delve deeper into the area, you eventually get transported to some place called the Nightmare World, where the area not only becomes darker, but everything in general becomes way more creepier.
What?
The layout of the Nightmare World is pretty much identical to the quote-unquote real world, except with a few small changes, such as obstacles that weren't originally in your way before, or certain rooms you could access previously no longer being available to you. Due to how dark the Nightmare World is, your vision is also limited to you only being able to see what is directly in front of you with your flashlight, which means that enemies can be a little bit hard to spot. You do, however, get an indication of whether an enemy is looming around though. Shortly after Harry and Sybil go their separate ways, you pick up a small radio from one of the tables in the diner. Although it doesn't pick up any radio signals, it does however start making a static or ringing sound whenever an enemy is nearby, which of course is incredibly helpful. Oh dear God, what the hell is that? I do have one complaint about the Nightmare World though, and that is that everything pretty much looks the same. I found myself getting pretty lost and confused a few times, even with the map, especially once I reached the hospital. That took me way longer to complete than I'd like to admit. One of the first things that you will notice in the game, especially in the Nightmare World, is that the soundtrack in this game is absolutely insane. The songs can range from being extremely loud and manic, to very quiet yet still incredibly tense, which of course does an amazing job at adding to the already terrifying atmosphere that the game has. The graphics in this game also look fantastic, especially compared to other games released at the time. A lot of games in the PS1 era would often use pre-rendered backgrounds for their games, mostly due to hardware limitations with the console. But as you can see, all of the environments in Silent Hill are rendered in real time. To get around the limitations, the developers of the game cleverly added fog and darkness to cover up most of the levels. That way would allow the game to only have to render the area surrounding the character, which is not only a great way to deal with the hardware limitations, but it also adds to the creepy vibes of the game. Jelly beans. Do you want to open the bag? Well, don't mind if I do. Really? Well, good fucking going, Harry. You ruined everything. Throughout your playthrough of Silent Hill, you'll meet a few interesting and mysterious characters, most of which do not understand what the hell is going on around the town.
Did you see those monsters? Have you ever seen such aberrations? Ever even heard of such things? You and I both know creatures like that don't exist.
Oh, yeah, I totally didn't see any monsters chasing me all across town that definitely don't exist. You fucking idiot. I'm sorry. One of the characters that are worth mentioning is this creepy old lady named Dahlia, who unlike everyone else seems to know what is going on. Some might say she would know too much. Dahlia throughout the game points us towards different locations in the town in order to help us find our daughter. Although she seems to be helping us throughout the game, she doesn't really seem that trustworthy. I don't know, man, kinda sus. Another character that is also worth mentioning is this girl named Alyssa. Throughout the game, we catch glimpses of her through cutscenes, but we don't really know why she is there. She does, however, play a major role in the game, but due to the mysterious nature of how the story is presented, you probably won't fully understand how she fits into the plot. Silent Hill's story is very vague in the way that it's never fully explained on what exactly is going on. There are many subtle hints lying around, such as notes that you can read and certain objects that you can interact with, but trying to piece together everything to fully understand the story is tough, and you probably won't get it, especially on your first run of the game. Though once you start really looking into it, the story is incredibly interesting and also quite sad. If you plan on playing Silent Hill more than once to better understand the story though, you'll be happy to know that there are 5 different endings that you can possibly get, which consists of 2 good and bad endings, and even a secret joke ending that involves aliens of all things. Pretty cool. As I am playing this game completely blind, I ended up getting the ending that most players will get for their first playthrough, which is one of the bad endings. And that is because the requirements for getting the good endings of the game are really specific, especially if you are going for the true ending of the game. We have now reached the final boss of the game, which depending on what ending route you have chosen, will determine which one of the 2 final bosses that you will face. Throughout the fight, the boss is completely stationary, and its method of attack is summoning bolts of lightning at you, which do a pretty large amount of damage. You are also unable to do any melee damage against the boss, since it has a force field surrounding it preventing you from getting too close, so the only way to damage it is by using your guns. I actually did struggle with this boss for 2 reasons. One of them being is that I found it hard to evade their attacks. Every time I tried to run away from their bolts of lightning, they would always catch up to me no matter what I do. The other reason why I struggled with this boss is because I was not dealing enough damage towards it. Remember how I said earlier on that I never found the rifle during my playthrough? Well, it turns out that gun is the most powerful weapon in the game, and it is also noted that the final boss is vulnerable to rifle shots, so, fuck! Even though I've pretty much fucked myself for the final part of the game, there is another way to beat the boss even without the rifle, and I'm gonna show you how. Before entering the boss area, what you have to do is empty out all of the ammo in your inventory. Okay, I know that sounds counterintuitive, but hear me out. After you have done that, enter the boss area and survive as long as possible. Once a bit of time has passed, eventually the boss will react as if a final shot has been fired. And there you have it. We have finished the game. Silent Hill was an overall incredible experience, and now that I have finally played the game, it has made me realize just how many horror games that I've played in the past that have been influenced by this game series in one way or another. Usually whenever I play a horror game, especially one that is considered older, I don't usually feel that scared. Silent Hill, though, with its anxiety-inducing soundtrack and its tense atmosphere, did an incredible job of making me feel that sense of fear. I'm super glad that I finally got around to playing Silent Hill, and after finishing it, it makes me even more excited to play the next 2 games in the series, specifically the second one, as I've heard is a favorite amongst many of the fans. But anyway, thank you all for watching. I hope... You guys hear something? Huh. Wonder what that noise was about. What the fuck? Oh! Hey everyone, thank you for watching the video. I had a lot of fun making this one, so I hope you guys enjoyed it. I'd like to say a quick special thank you to my patrons for their support. I really appreciate you guys, and your support really helps me out a lot. I'd like to take the chance to quickly plug my Twitch channel at www.twitch.tv/pixcgr, because sometime in the future, I'll be doing a Silent Hill run live with the goal of getting the good ending of the game. So if you guys are interested in watching that, feel free to chuck me a follow. But anyway guys, once again, thank you all for watching the video, and I hope to see you guys in the next one. Bye bye.